All right, so this knife thoughts video is going to be a look at this knife, and this is the Civivi Governor. And first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to my friend Mark who loaned this knife for review. As I always say, I really appreciate it when people loan knives because unfortunately I can't buy every knife that I would like to have, or even more so every knife that I would like to review. So I really appreciate it when people loan knives. I'm pretty much always up for it, and it's something that really helps the channel. So again, a huge thank you to Mark for loaning this knife. So if you watch my channel, you probably know that I am a fan of Civivi. Civivi makes a lot of really nice knives at good budget-friendly prices, and I think you get a good value. And I was excited to check this Governor model out because it's one of Civivi's bigger or particularly longer knives. So this knife has about a 3.9-inch blade. 3.86 is what I think the specs say. So that's a pretty significant blade. I want to show you some comparisons for size. So here is a Benchmade full-size griptilian. You can see the Civivi is definitely longer. Then I will show you a Spyderco Native 5. So significantly longer on the Civivi. And then getting into some, quite a bit bigger Spyderco knives, here is the Police 4 lightweight. Now the Police 4 is longer, but you actually are getting a pretty similar amount of edge on these two knives. Relatively longer still on the Police, but pretty similar. And then here is the Spyderco Native Chief. And again, same deal. The Native Chief is definitely longer, but when you take the finger choil into account, which I will talk about later on the Civivi, you get a pretty similar amount of edge and also a relatively similar blade shape. The Civivi is a little bit more of a drop point than a spear point like the Native Chief, but it's definitely a significantly sized knife. And considering that, and also considering the fact that this is the Damascus version, as you can see, it's, again, at a really, I think, fair price point. These are around 75, 76, something like that, dollars. So it's a lot of knife for not a huge price tag. As for the quality of the knife, I think that it's made really well. I got this again from Marc, and when I got it, it was nice and smooth. Now, I will say that it's not quite as drop closed as some Civivi knives are. So for example, their flipper knives are generally going to come with that drop closed action. This Governor did not have that type of drop closed action quite. You can see it does start to drop, but not all the way there. And it might just need some break-in time, but it is still very smooth. So it is a thumb stud only knife, and if you're familiar with thumb stud only knives, which for some reason are a little bit rarer these days, I guess, it feels kind of glassy. So it's a very smooth feel. There's no hang-ups or significant friction on that, as you can hear and hopefully see. So it is very smooth, despite not being completely drop shut smooth. It also came pretty much perfectly centered from Marc, and I don't really think that he adjusted it at all. And it has no blade play whatsoever. So I'll open it. It's not locked. It just is past the detent there. No blade play at all. I mean, very solid. And you can see in there at those washers, it does have phosphor bronze washers. So a little different in its construction than a lot of Civivi knives that often have the flipper opening and the ball bearing pivot, but still very smooth. Now, moving on to the design of this knife, I really like the design of this knife quite a bit. The reason for that is because, again, if you watch my channel a lot, you know that I like a nice simple handle, because a nice simple handle shape makes for an ergonomic handle. You can get a grip on the knife, not have to worry about any crazy ridges or handle angles and things like that. And it will feel good in most grips for most people with most hand sizes. And I do have, relatively wider hands, and this knife definitely has enough space for me. You can see there is space left over, below my pinky finger. So, being that it's a larger knife, I don't think pretty much anyone will have any worries about not having enough handle real estate. And I think it's going to be an ergonomic knife for pretty much everybody also. I really enjoy the handle shape on this. I think that it's just nice, simple, practical. And this version, the Damascus version, has black G10. It's not the most aggressive G10 out there, but it does have some texture to it, so it gives you a little bit of grip there. And looks like good G10. It has the same rounded liners that Civivis often have, which you can see there, and the liners are coated. And then as for the blade shape, again, I really like it. I really enjoy this kind of classic drop point blade shape. It's going to be an extremely utilitarian blade shape. You're going to be able to use this for normal like push cutting on cardboard, things like that. You could definitely use it for pull cutting because of this nice point that it comes to, as well as if you need any piercing tasks with the point, it'll definitely work well for that. And just a really practical blade shape, in my opinion. As for the look of the blade, well, before we get to the Damascus, first of all, it is definitely nicely ground. It has a nice even grind, has a nice looking swedge at the top here, a drawn swedge on both sides that, if you look from the top, is very even. And then the grind lines, the plunge grinds, are nicely done. Not really a big surprise. It's something I've come to expect from Civivi, and being that these are machine ground, it shouldn't be a big surprise. But it is well ground, and it seems to be nice and thinly ground also. I'll see if I can get this to focus on that edge there, but it does seem to be ground for slicing, ground for actual use. Another design feature I wanted to mention about the blade of this knife is that it does not have that finger choil, which I mentioned earlier. That's something that a lot of Civivi knives, particularly the flippers like this Dogma and the Wyvern, have. You can see that these have a choil there, which, whether it's a sharpening choil or a finger choil, I think that it is more of a finger choil. You can definitely get your finger in there. But one downside to those, even though that they don't really bother me, one downside to those is that you don't get as much cutting edge out of the blade. So there's about half an inch or so, maybe even an inch on some, that is taken up with that choil, so you don't get that edge. And that is not the case on the Governor. So as you can see, it does not have that choil, and it really makes it so you're getting pretty much a full 3.8 inch edge out of this 3.86 inch ish blade. I didn't get exact to the millimeter measurements, but you're getting a pretty good amount of edge out of this knife, even considering its size. So I actually do like that feature, particularly on a thumb stud opening knife that doesn't have that completely drop shut closed action, so you don't have to worry about that edge going all the way down to your finger or your thumb. Really, even if it did, you can see that it goes to your thumbnail, but I do think that that's a fitting thing that it doesn't have the completely drop closed action, being that there is no finger choil. So it's a feature that on this particular model I do like. Now, the kind of most noticeable feature of this knife, I think, is the Damascus blade, and it's really good looking. The exact steel in these, I'm sure it is out there. I have seen different things said about it, but it is stainless Damascus, so this isn't your typical mystery steel to super low carbon 1040 and 1060 or something like that. Damascus, this is really pattern welded, two different stainless steels. Now, not necessarily the highest end steels or super steels, but they are stainless. And so the nice thing about that is you get to have a Damascus blade that really looks nice, looks like nice pattern welded steel, without having to worry about the rust that often is a concern on, well, really this price range of Damascus knives. Normally, normally a $75 knife in Damascus is carbon and will rust easily, and it's probably not super high quality. But what you don't have to worry about the rust that you normally have to worry about on budget Damascus knives. So I really appreciate that. I think a lot of people who aren't necessarily knife enthusiasts really like Damascus. In fact, I had a family member who, appreciates knives as a user of knives, but also somewhat, the aesthetics, but isn't an enthusiast, said recently that he really wanted to get a Damascus knife, but they're usually really expensive. And I said, well, guess what? There's a company that makes them for a really fair price, and you don't have to worry about them rusting, Civivi. So I do think that that's a really nice thing. It's something that opens these knives up to even more people, especially at the price range, and especially that these are pretty widely available. Now, speaking of the availability of this knife, it's actually not available. It's out of stock at the two places I normally recommend getting Civivi knives, which are White Mountain Knives, because I have a discount code, Knife Thoughts. It actually works for any knives there. So, if you ever are buying from White Mountain Knives, you can use the code Knife Thoughts for 10% off. And also from Civivi directly. It also is not, as of my last checking, available on Amazon, which is another place you can get Civivi knives, but it is available at some other dealers like Blade HQ and Knife Center. And there it's a little higher than at White Mountain Knives. It's about $77, but still I think a really fair value for what you're getting. Again, I really like the design of this knife, so much so that I might get one for myself, just because I think it's an extremely practical and really also good looking knife with this design. And it has the, high quality build that we've come to expect from Civivi. Speaking of, I didn't mention, it does have the typical Civivi deep carry clip. But I really, again, appreciate getting to check out this knife, although I think it might make me buy another knife. So, that's not always the best thing. Like I said, I can't buy every knife I want to, but this knife is just really cool, so I might have to pick one up. And again, thanks to Marc for loaning it. Again, I think that this is a good value, especially if you want a larger knife, being that it is about 3.9 inches on the blade. So this is the Civivi Governor in Damascus. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you get notified when I post new videos. And also check out my social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.